What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. I'm your guest, Alice Heiman, and I have a CEO here with me today who said after selling her last business that she was not going to be a CEO again. She took some time off in 2018 after selling High Ground, and she was keeping herself quite busy doing some consulting work, being on a few advisory boards, when all of a sudden an opportunity came along that she couldn't pass up. It had something to do with being a challenger. I'd like to welcome Andee Harris today. She is the CEO of Challenger, best known for the Challenger sale. Welcome, Andee.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you're here, and I got the opportunity to be on your podcast not too long ago with Allie, and that was a lot of fun. So I know we're going to have a lot of fun today as well, talking about your journey. So here you are, CEO of Challenger, and I want to know how this all happened. So let's rewind and take you back to what was going on in your life right
Yeah,
before you sold your company, and then what you were doing when this opportunity came along.
yeah, fantastic. So, I sold my company. It was called, as you mentioned, it was called High Ground. It was an employee engagement software company. And love the business. Like most founders, CEOs, it was like my child, right? And so you grow it and you watch it develop, and it's so exciting. But we had the opportunity to exit the business in 2018 to Vista Equity Partners, which is one of the largest private equity firms in the world. And so, a really incredible opportunity. I spent a year after that exit, integrating the business and making sure that everything was all set with the business. And then, really felt like I had done everything I had set out to do. We set these lofty goals for ourselves, and I felt really good about where I was in my career. And I decided that I was not going to be a CEO again, and started teaching at Northwestern, Kellogg, in their MBA program around leading and launching startups. As you mentioned, doing some advisory board work, some executive coaching. So I was really loving, what I was doing, and kind of created this whole career for myself and thought, well, this is it. And then, the universe, make no plans because the universe might change them. And I got a call from Marlin Private Equity, who had just purchased the Challenger sale from Gartner. And they were like, hey, we've heard a lot about you. And there's this company called Challenger. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And I was literally like, the Challenger sale? And they're like, yeah, the book. I was like, oh my God, like it changed my life in 2008. I had started a business in 1999. And I tell everyone I'm a recovering relationship seller. And I read the Challenger sale, and a mentor of mine had given it to me. And to this day, I can't remember who gave it to me, but someone gave it to me. And it really changed how I sell, my approach, how I coach my sales team as I was a founder CEO. And so, it was just, I couldn't pass it up because it's always been just a passion of mine, and the rest is history. Now I'm 3 years into the job.
Wow. And for those of you who don't know, Challenger in its original form was a research and training company, right? So tell us a little bit about that and the founders, and then what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, so Challenger was actually started during the recession, and really the idea, it was originally part of CEB, and it was really this idea of like, of course during the recession everyone's like, it's hard to sell. I mean, it's not probably dissimilar from a lot of what you guys are all experiencing today during these uncertain economic times. But what was fascinating to the researchers were that some people were winning and doing really well during the recession, and winning pretty big, and their careers were taking off in sales, while other people were really, really struggling. And so what they wanted to do was to say, like, what do these sellers do differently? What makes them be so incredibly successful, even when the economy is, in a rough patch? And so what they found was that there were 5 profiles of sales, sales types. And So those profiles are, a relationship seller, which I just referred to. And that's someone who really, knows everything about your kids, your family. You all probably been with a relationship seller. They take you out to dinner, they know everything about you, but they're not necessarily, really that, taking control of that sales process. And then there's the lone wolf, which is someone who doesn't put their stuff in CRM, doesn't go onto team meetings, really just is like, it's all about me. I run my own little P&L. It's almost my own little business, right? I'm almost a little entrepreneur. And then you have kind of that solution seller, right? That more consultative seller. And so that person is really, always focused on kind of like, if there's a nail, there's got to be a hammer, right? Everything is, a solution-based, seller. And so, and then they started to think about, well, what is, what are these people doing that's not really working for them? And then, sorry, there's a hard worker. So that's the person who does put everything in CRM, is, always on meetings, always, showing up, they're staying late, they're making thousands of calls, but they're not effective. And so what they found was that, that's a really great base. You could be a relationship seller or a lone wolf, but what you really need are these challenger skills. And what those sales reps that did differently, that were successful during the recession, was that they tailored their messaging, and then they took control of the sales process. And so those three things led into the challenger methodology.
Right. And so the founders, when it was called CEB, and they sold it to Gartner, and Gartner took the research arm and took Brent Adamson, right? And then the rest of it, right, was there waiting for someone to pick it up. The training side of it. So that's what happened with the investors that you work with, and they found you. Now, how did they find you?
So there's a guy named, he goes by Triple D, but it's Sandel Deegan. He's a Chicago entrepreneur. He sold his company to DocuSign. So very successful entrepreneur. I've known him in the Chicago tech scene, as you can imagine. 20 years ago, I started my career 30 years ago, but I met him 20 years ago. There weren't a lot of women CEOs in tech. And every time they needed a woman on a panel or to talk about diversity, he was like, "Hey, Andee, I know I keep bugging you, but can you do me another favor? Can you come, talk to my, to the women in my business?" And so, we really got to know each other through that. And I just love him. He's been a huge mentor, trusted advisor to me. And, we followed each other's careers, and he started working for Merlin. And when they were struggling to figure out what to do, with the business, especially during COVID, if you think about the core business of Challenger, it was really in-person training.
In person, yeah.
Centered around sales kickoffs, which are probably a lot of you are going to right now. This is the month of sales kickoffs, right? And it was really centered all around that in-person training. So part of it was my knowing the digital and SaaS. I come from digital and SaaS software, and also just really having that vision of like, how do you create something from a more of a digital perspective. And so he's like, "Hey, I actually know the perfect person. I don't know if she's willing to do it." And so it was a combination of Triple D calling me, the Challenger book, and just, really, I couldn't pass it up. And so, and I haven't looked back since. So
it's really very exciting. And I think that the Challenger model is amazing. And so many companies, so many sellers have benefited so much from it. So, all right, you come in, and there's been a little bit of a pause because, they sold it to Gartner. Gartner was trying to sell off the training. Who knows what was going on when you arrived on the scene. So what was sales like when you first got there? Let's start there, and then we'll move to
I think
you made.
Yeah, I mean, I think most CEOs who've taken over anything that's PE backed, right? There's the vision of what they sell you, and then there's the actual reality of what's happening in the company, right? So so definitely, it was an interesting time. So they, like you mentioned, they purchased the company in 2008. That first year when you buy a company, there's a lot of integration, transitions, there's a lot going on. And so really nothing had been done, 2018 to 2019. Then they were just starting to kind of hit their stride and really start to integrate some things. And then COVID hit. So, I mean, it was a really rough couple of years for Challenger. So by the time I had come in, imagine we're about 8 months into the pandemic, and, Challenger hadn't really had a chance to overhaul their product or their offering or their services. So they were essentially, dead in the water, right? I mean, we were trying to do some virtual training. Also at that point, people didn't know how long COVID was going to last. So it was kind of like, oh, we'll just push it till next month. Well, we're a business that books revenue based on consumption, and people doing training. And so what was happening was all of our revenue was getting pushed out. So not a great situation. So the first thing I did was like, we need to figure out our product, right? We need to figure out, how do we get people doing e-learning? How do we do virtual training? How do we essentially get this in the hands of as many people as possible? Because we need to fulfill the training. And to be honest, people wanted their challenger training. It wasn't, we had the demand, we just didn't know how to deliver it. So a lot of what I focused on at the beginning was just, how do we deliver it efficiently, effectively? We obviously want to make sure, we pride ourselves in the impact we make to our customers. So we wanted to make sure that that training was really effective. We didn't want to just give them something that, wasn't what we felt comfortable delivering. The quality needed to be there. So that was the first thing. It was really focused on the product side. And then, it was really interesting. So although, this was an established business, a lot of our leads and had come from Gartner. So Gartner, being a large company, they were just throwing leads over the fence. And so to my surprise, there was no demand gen, there was no marketing, because a lot of it was just legacy customers and selling to those legacy customers. And so, that was probably the biggest shock, was when I walked into Challenger and realized we didn't have like our own separate marketing. So the next thing I really did was focus on demand gen, and how do we kind of build up, that demand gen engine. And for those of you who've had to set up, so my previous background, I was a CMO for a public company. And so for me, that's really, you got to get that pipeline, right? It's so important. And so that was really kind of number two, was just making sure that we got our pipeline moving. And then from there, it was just figuring out the right talent, where we had holes, really trying to assess the talent of the executive team. And yeah, I mean, a lot of work to be done, but the good news is we really turned it around in 2021. So that was exciting.
That is exciting. And, it's interesting because you mentioned that you were a CMO, and of course, then you were an entrepreneur after that, with starting several companies and exiting. But it's not that common to find a CEO with marketing background,
Yeah.
right? You are kind of, I'd say, in a very small percent of CEOs. And I'm even trying to think on the show if I've had any CEOs who came from marketing, maybe one or two, really, out of 100. So
Yeah.
that is unusual. But what serendipity, right? When here you are saying, wow, we have demand, but people are pushing it off because they keep thinking, yeah, COVID will be over soon and we'll go back to live training. And then people will still have the demand and realizing, oh, maybe we're not going to do that. And you hurrying up like everyone else did to figure out, how are we going to deliver high quality on demand live training, or, on demand and live training, right? So that everybody can get what they need. And, you did it, right? Like many of the companies, it just, wow, overnight figured out, pretty much, not without a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but figured out how to deliver high quality training online. But then you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, we do not have a lead generation machine. So let me turn my attention. And luckily, you had the marketing knowledge to do it. So let's just stay there for a minute and talk about it, because everybody wants to know how to generate leads better, right? It's something that's on everyone's mind. So tell us about what you started doing. What was the fastest path to lead generation for you?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm a big fan of, SEO, organic search, right? So, making sure, like, we didn't even have an agency that we used from a search perspective. So setting up our search, our website wasn't optimized for SEO. So landing pages, making sure that we had, all of that in place. And then just really thinking about our strategy, like, where do we get, where's our target market? Where do they come from? What do they read? Really, once again, like, understanding the persona of our customers. What is our ICP? I mean, even going down to ideal client profile. What is our ICP? Where are we going after? What channels currently are working for us? And like I said, we were very much a referral business, and so that was tough during COVID too, because people weren't going to trade shows, and there was no word of mouth, except for. So then I started thinking about like social selling, our LinkedIn presence. We redid our brand, because even to me, like, our brand was very like stodgy, old. We were trying to become more of this like innovative tech company, right? Because that's kind of where my background is, but also like where we needed to go. I mean, I'm a big proponent of like, what got you here isn't going to get you there. And so really trying to understand all the parts of the business. So that was kind of like the first priority, was just redoing our website, landing pages, SEO. Thought really, I brought in content writers. So really thinking about kind of that thought leadership, social selling, which I love Sam McKenna and everything that, her team is doing. Refine Labs, like, started to follow some of that stuff around early social selling. So that was a big piece of what we did, but a lot of it was honestly getting the right talent in, people who really understood. Luckily I have a great network of people from startups all the way to, more public CMOs. So I started to bring in people that I knew either knew the industry or had really set up those I would say those early days of truly like guerrilla marketing, right? Like how do you get out there? And remember, you can't do events. There's no, so webinars were huge back, back in the days. We started a webinar series. Thanks to Jen Allen, we started our podcast series. So once again, just thinking about, I promoted her to a chief evangelist officer, something I've had a lot of success with early on in startups, is just having somebody who's really kind of that brand ambassador. And I think a lot of the things that CEOs struggle with is, especially CEOs who aren't necessarily external facing, it's a lot of work to be that evangelist for your brand and your business, and also run a business, especially in early stages of a company. So really having Jen kind of be out there and, doing the LinkedIn, doing the podcast, doing all those things, so I could really focus on the operations of the business. I actually love being out in front of people, but it was great to have sort of someone else to do that, so I could really focus on the nuts and bolts of the business.
Yeah. So you had to really turn on every piece that would help you generate leads.
Yeah.
Could leave no stone unturned. So how did that translate to your sales team? How did those leads start to get turned over? And meanwhile, what were the salespeople doing on their end for prospecting while you were getting all of these other pieces set up?
Yeah. So a lot of it was that we had to hire a bunch of salespeople, because we had actually previously to myself joining, we had laid off about 50% of our sales team. So, one of it was I had to hire a whole entire sales team, right? So we had to hire people. We had to just essentially revamp. We're private equity backed, and so you can't go a year with no sales, right? And say,
No.
oh, we're going to keep the sales team. So
And
part
in
of
the
it
middle
was
of
just
COVID, again, it's like, okay,
COVID,
I got to get
so,
that. I just started as CEO. I got to get this lead generation machine turned on. Oops. And we need a bunch of salespeople during COVID when we can't interview them live or bring them into the office or any of those things.
Yeah, and once again, the traditional ways that we typically sold, relationship sellers, although we're challenger sellers, but like golf courses, events, right? Like the Gartner CSO Summit, right? Like some of those things that like our sales team, the ones that were still in seat, knew how to sell. Like they didn't have any of that at their exposure, they couldn't do that. So we had to also bring in people who were used to more of that digital, a little bit more of that online selling. Once again, that's where the demand gen comes in, is key. Also that outbound and inbound motion. So we had a lot of outbound with Challenger. We had no inbound, like I talked about. So, just creating that whole inbound, which, now when you think about it, most companies, about 70% of their leads come from inbound. And so it was really fascinating. I never worked at a company where there was more outbound than inbound. So that was, even for me, like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this before. And so really trying to understand that inbound motion and what that would look like for a challenger.
I would say though, Andee, that most of the companies I work with that, they're between like 20 and 100 million in revenues, the larger percent of their business does come from outbound, and they're all tech companies and tech, SaaS, innovative, types of industries. Yeah, it's really an outbound motion, and very few of them have inbound. I specialize in, the complex sale and outbound for the complex sale, but I had to really learn a lot about inbound, and I'm not a marketer, as you know. I'm, a sales expert. And so, but companies need both, right? You need a good balance.
For sure.
Yeah. So it sounds
really
like you
interesting.
developed that. Yeah.
Well, I think what's interesting is, even at Challenger, we can see our inbound is typically more SMB mid-market customers, and then our enterprise is more outbound. So, even just understanding how to reach different customers, right? So I think that there is a nice mix. To your point, you need both. You need a mix. And I think understanding what inbound gets you versus what outbound gets you, I think is really helpful. So really making sure that you're thinking about that. And then what is the mix of clients that you want? Obviously you have your ideal customers, but then you have, other customers, which I don't want to say they're not ideal, but they're just different mix. So one of the things that was really exciting and kind of a benefit of Challenger becoming more from an e-learning platform. So we did all of our products. We created an e-learning platform called Activation. So one of the huge advantages of that is that we could then go down into the mid-market and SMB space, because we then became a lot more scalable and affordable for an SMB or a mid-market customer. So the nice thing about that is that we do now have a product suite where if you're an SMB customer, we can serve you all the way up to a Fortune 500 company that's maybe rolling out. We have businesses that roll out 25 concurrent sessions all across the globe, right? So that, the scale now of challengers is really something that's pretty unique.
Yeah. Wow. So you were hiring salespeople that were a different kind of sellers than you had. Because before, right, you had a lot of inbound for your companies that you built, and you would flip those over to the sellers, and they would, continue the conversation and close deals where appropriate, right? Now not only do you need people who can work from home during COVID, something some of them might not have done before. You need people who understand digital well enough to use the digital channels to help them prospect, right? And then, you've got to train them all basically, right, on how to do this under crazy circumstances without a lot of inbound. So it's like, hey, listen, you got to do some cold outreach here because we don't have much inbound yet. So how did you find the right sellers to do that? And what kind of training did you provide for them?
Yeah, so luckily Challenger has a tool called Selection, which is actually a hiring profile of a challenger. So we did use our own tools, and obviously great recruiters and recruiting, but we really started to look at people coming from the SaaS industry, and just maybe changing a little bit of the makeup of the sales team at Challenger. And once again, we still have some great sales reps that we obviously like our existing customers and we changed kind of the makeup and structure of our sales team. So we divided our sales team between new logo and then existing accounts. And then we even took it one step further and said existing accounts, key, which is our Fortune 500 larger accounts, and majors, which is still mid-market SMB, because we realized that selling to those customers is a little bit different profile. And then same with existing customers, and new logo. So new logo, we also have key, new logo, and then we have key majors. And so the idea is that it's a very different profile for all 4 of those sellers. And so making sure we have the right people. So, if you're really good at, farming, I mean, I hate the whole, hunter farmer model, but that, or I guess thinking about it that way. But if you're really good at hunting, then, put those skills are different than someone who's really good at farming an account. So we really try to focus on what people did best and then kind of put them in those categories. And then we aligned our CS team to the same. So we were like, you are a customer success person for key, because that's a very different skill set. That's way more, you need to really be in the details, a lot of project management.
Very proactive outbound.
Very proactive.
Right.
And I would say the other thing that's interesting is Fortune 500 companies now, most of them have some sort of sales enablement function. So it's a little bit different because you're working with sales enablement. If you look at SMB and mid-market customers, some of them don't have sales enablement yet or that function. So it's a little bit different what you're actually providing in the services that you need. So some of our most complex customers are actually SMB, newer to a methodology and to, to really creating a sales team and sales structure.
Right. So I like the way you've set this up now. So you said, okay, we've got our existing customers who we need to nurture and retain. And for the ones who can grow, we need to get in there and grow them. Right. And then we've got the sellers who are out there getting net new, right? Brand new customers who have never done business with us before. But then you even segmented more and you're like, hey, who are our key, or, they're larger, they have something about them that makes them, more of an enterprise sale, a more difficult sale. Maybe there's more buying influences involved and it's more complexity to it, and they require some different things. So you get the types of sellers that are really good at that. And then you also have, your mid-market and companies who, like you said, don't have sales enablement, but you still need user adoption. So your CX team is out there separated as well so that they can support these larger key customers in a different way than these smaller companies who, they still need help, but they need a different kind of help. They don't have sales enablement, but they still need high user adoption. So you really thought through what the customer needs, not what would be a convenient way for us to organize our sales. You thought through what the customer needs.
Yeah. And I would say that account segmentation is so critical, especially during an uncertain economy, and really understanding one, what the customer needs, but what is their buying process, right? Not what is our buying process. We would love to focus only on how we want you to buy, but how do our customers want to buy? Well, it's very different if you're an SMB versus an existing key account. They buy very differently. So just understanding that and making sure that our sales teams understood that. So I think that's something that was a big differentiator for us.
Yeah. Well, we exist to serve them, right? That is our job.
Yes.
We exist to
Yeah.
serve these customers, and we need to do it in the way that they want to be served and that makes sense for them so that they do become successful customers. Like I always say to CEOs, it's not about your list of customers. It's your list of successful customers that matters because they're referenceable. They will sing from the mountaintops about how great you are, right? So, just having customers that they use it, they're satisfied is just not enough. We have to really go to this place of we have very successful customers who get every penny and more out of what we sold them because we've helped them, we've onboarded them, we make sure their people are engaged and using it properly, we've trained them, right? All of these things that happen, and it sounds like you have put an organization in place that can really support that.
Absolutely. And I think, when I think about why I was so passionate about Challenger in the first place, it's because it's truly changing people's lives. Like it is putting more food on their table, it's helping them make money, right? It is, a quintessential skill. And I think, teaching somebody something that is a behavior change that can truly change their lives, to me is invaluable. And so I think that to your point, it's all about impact. It's not just, yes, we have great customers, we have very referenceable customers, but it's really truly like the amount of people. I mean, one of my favorite stories is not that our customer had cancer, but our customer was talking to us about, she was advocating for some chemotherapy and just some treatments, and she was trying to get into some Eastern medicine as well. And she was talking to her doctor, and she's like, I got to be honest, I use a Challenger approach to essentially get in this trial. I was really trying to get in this medical trial. And she's like, I thought about like taking control in the sales process and like, what do I need to do to tailor the message to all the different stakeholders I need to talk to? And then how do I take control of this? And she's like, I literally thought about the Challenger framework. And so like, that to me is like, that is way, more important than anything I've ever heard, right? That, yes, I love hearing the ROI stories, and I love hearing the impact that we made on customers. And even when we're mentioned in, annual reports or things like that, it's fantastic. But that to me is truly life-changing.
Yeah. Wow. And I think that's so true. That methodology can be applied to many places in our lives, right? Not just as sellers, but it's very important as sellers because our customers need our guidance. Our customers need us to ask hard questions and help them discover things and learn so that they can get a better solution in the end, right? And so I think that's so important. All right. Well, Andee, you did a ton in 3 years. I mean, I don't even know how you did all of that. And to top it off, you did it during COVID, which is just remarkable. So I think that don't even know what to say. It's fantastic. So what's ahead for your company? What are
Yeah.
you looking forward to? How are you changing and continuing to grow your sales team? What are you excited about?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much, but I would say what I'm really excited about is a lot of the integrations that we've done and a lot of the partnerships we've done. So we have a partnership with Gong, and so we have a Challenger Smart Tracker. So for those of you that use Gong or any type of conversational intelligence software, the idea is that it will tell you how much you're acting like a challenger as part of that call. So once again, giving people immediate feedback, helping them. We have a product called Loop, which is a win loss analysis data tool that a lot of our SMB and mid-market customers love because it gives them real-time feedback on how that call is going. And when you think about selling during these tough economic times, a lot of people lose customers to indecision. So knowing early on that a customer might not be ready to buy, or just understanding that buying process a little bit better based on the feedback that we're getting in real time from our win-loss analysis tool is really helpful. So that's one of the things. And then we have a new Salesforce app that allows you. So one of the things we heard from our customers, and once again, it's all about listening to what your customers want, was that they really want to be able to hold people accountable to use the methodology in every stage of the Salesforce process. Or whatever CRM tool they use. Most of our customers do use Salesforce. And so we created a Salesforce app that literally is like, as you move something to the next stage, it will say, hey, here's some things to think about. For example, you just move this to, stage 3, whatever that might be in your Salesforce. And have you identified your mobilizer? And are you sure they're a mobilizer? So for those of you that are not familiar with Challenger, a mobilizer is someone who is like your advocate, who's on the customer side, but they're really helping to drive that business case. Because often people will identify someone and say, oh, this person's a mobilizer, but they might be a talker or a blocker. And a talker is just that, right? He's someone who's always takes your calls and they're super chatty, but yet every time you ask to talk to somebody else, like, oh, don't worry about it, I've got it. And the blocker is the person that is just like, yeah, do we need this? I don't really want this. And so, once again, giving them the red flags, like the red flag of a talker is like, they always take your calls. Is that like weird? And then they don't let you talk to anybody else, right? A blocker is looking for some of those signs too. So I think that, being able to really show throughout the Salesforce process, as you're moving things along to those stages, that you are identifying those challenger pieces, that's going to make you feel more confident, and it's going to help the managers forecast better. Because one of the things I think that's really tough during these economic times is forecasting accuracy and really being able to know what is going to push, what's going to go to no decision. Because we know, based on the incredible work that Matt Dixon did with Jolt, we know that about 80% of deals, depending on the industry, are ending up in no decision. So it's a pretty high number that you're losing to.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that's what's coming up for you. And what about for your sales team? You continue
Yeah.
to grow? Are you in a good spot right now?
Yeah, we're in a great, we are actually hiring. So we're looking for a director of sales. But we are growing. We are looking for AEs and ADs as well. We have our sales kickoff in Dallas coming up at the end of January,
exciting.
and it is in person. So we're super excited about that. One of the things that we've been really trying to do during these remote times is bring people together as much as possible. Although a lot of our customers have chosen to do, virtual kickoffs, we really do believe in person and giving people the opportunity to see each other, especially because we're spread across the globe. So we have our sales kickoff coming up, and I'm really, truly excited. And what's awesome about our sales kickoff is one of our largest customers is coming and speaking. And I think being able, once again, for our team to be able to hear a customer and how they truly use our product is, I'm so excited. Like, I can't wait to have them. So looking forward to that from a sales perspective. We are growing our sales team. We're being conservative with growth, I think, like everyone right now. But yeah, truly, generally really excited about that. And then our new Jolt offering, which we partnered with Matt Dixon, who wrote the original Challenger book, is all around indecision. And we're having a lot of success with that. And really, once again, helping people get to that decision quicker, or understanding, what is the intentions of their customers.
Yeah, understanding indecision. Sellers need to learn that, right?
Yeah.
It's a big one, and they can have an impact on it. They just don't know how necessarily. So we do have to help them with that. So that's exciting for me to hear that you're working on that as well. My goodness. So our time has come to an end. It's like I could talk with you about this stuff
I know.
all day.
I feel like there's so much more to I have all these questions I would ask you. I was like, oh my gosh.
I know. We just have to do it again. It's no problem,
sure,
right?
for sure.
But I do want everyone to know how they can find you and the Challenger. And do you want them to connect on LinkedIn, or
Yeah, of course.
look for your website? Tell us where to find you.
Yeah, so we're challengerinc.com. So definitely come to our website. I'm on LinkedIn. It's Andee, Andee Harris, Harris. We also have a podcast. Like Alice, we have a podcast as well. It's called Winning the Challenger Sale on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So those are great places to find us. And yeah, looking forward to connecting.
And as usual, if you do decide to connect with Andee on LinkedIn, you must tell her that you heard her on my show, Sales Talk for CEOs. So, Andee, thank you so much for sharing your story. You're incredible, amazing what you've done in 3 years. I don't even know. You must not sleep.
I am a little bit of an insomniac. I do tell people that. I'm like, it is a little bit easier, but also all the issues that go along with that. So.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. I can be an insomniac myself. My newsletter this week, in fact, talks about that and offers up a book on sleep. So if anybody reads my newsletter, or if you want to read my newsletter, let me know. Go to my website and subscribe, or just direct message me on LinkedIn and I'll send it to you. Thank you again, Andee. It's really great to have you here, and we will do this again.
Yes. Thank you again. I really appreciate the time.
If you enjoyed the show, please